Hey guys, it's Sean O'Connell, the managing director here at Cinema Blend and the co-host of the Real Blend podcast, and I am setting this up to let you guys know that we had some technical difficulties with the show this week. My fault completely. Right as we began to record the show for YouTube and also for the audio podcast, I didn't hit record. And so thankfully, producer Gabe, in all of his glory, has a backup, but that means that the audio feed for our audio listeners on my end is not going to be quite as good as you are used to. And of course, on the YouTube side, you're going to see an animated graphic and not my beautiful face. So soak it in right now. And this is all you're going to get of me this week. I truly feel horrible. The reason that it happened is because we recorded the day that the Snyder Cut got released. And my mind was elsewhere, all over the place. And we had Damien Chazelle, which I'm really excited for you guys to hear in this week's episode. So I'm not going to delay any longer. I just wanted to sort of set that up and let you guys know why I sound a little bit differently and why you can't see me in the YouTube video. The rest of the guys are here, and we have an amazing show for you guys this week. A ton of great things happening, including Damien Chazelle as our guest. So without further ado, Real Blend 119. Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode number 119 of Real Blend, a podcast that simply cannot wait to
release the fucking Snyder Cut, baby.
So that's Jason Momoa joining us for this week's episode of a very special podcast. We are recording it on the day that the Snyder Cut has been released, and we will tell you guys why that's so important. My name is Sean O'Connell, the managing director here at Cinema Blend, joined, as always, by Jake Hamilton of Fox 32 in Chicago. Hi, Jakey.
Sean, really quick, I know we're going to talk about it in a second, but I want you to do me a favor. I want you to rank the following 4 days in your life. The day you got married, the 2 births of your sons, and the day that they released the Snyder Cut. I want you to rank those 4 days.
They have to go in order. It has to be wedding, PJ, then Brendan, and then the Snyder Cut.
Wait,
Okay.
but what about the day you met your actual boys though, like Jake and Kevin?
That's
Gabe.
first, then wedding, then the boys, and then the Snyder Cut.
Okay, so
Thank you for
I'll
keeping
text
your
you for the
priorities.
real. Yeah, I'll text you for the real. Oh, look at that.
The press release in my hand. I actually printed a press release in today's day and age so that I can hold this.
Hey, Sean, you notice something interesting on that poster right there? There's a character on that poster that wasn't on the original marketing.
Henry Cavill,
Yeah.
Superman, and also it says HBO Max at the bottom. Well, listen, we'll get into this in a little bit. That's Kevin McCarthy of Fox 5 in Washington, D.C. with his Justice League hat. Hi, Kev.
Hello, Sean. Sean, you and I have been talking a lot today and we'll get into that in the show, but it's been a very special day. I'm just happy to be a part of the show and a friend of yours and to celebrate what happened. So it's very cool.
In addition to the Snyder Cut getting released, which is tremendous news, we'll have to tell you guys that in this week's episode, we have a very special guest.
Yeah.
And it's kind of ridiculous that this has been, I'm not even going to say it's sidetracked. It's not sidetracked. It's as important. It's as important than when we posted a poll, which we'll get to in a minute, that we asked you guys to guess who our special guest for this week's episode of the Real Blend podcast would be. And we put as the 4 choices, Christopher Nolan, who has a movie coming out called Tenet, David Fincher, because we just did the Social Network commentary for that, Damien Chazelle, patron saint of the Real Blend podcast, and Quentin Tarantino. Quentin Tarantino.
Friend of the show.
And the ridiculous bit about all of this is that one of those answers, one of those people was the actual answer. Like you could have chosen any of them. And it was fun for us to sit back and listen to all you guys debate about who it could be for various reasons, because they were like, well, they wouldn't be this excited for round 3 of Quentin. And
I would say that's not true.
yes, we would. And then Kevin was teasing people with IMAX cameras, and that led people to think that it might be Nolan. Do we tell them now? We could reveal it now. Well, it'll be in the title, I would imagine, right? It's going to be in the title. It's Damien Chazelle. Damien Chazelle is joining the Real Blend podcast to talk about his Netflix show, The Eddie, and then also just his career, of which we've been huge proponents of.
Someone did guess that. Someone did say, like, I bet it's Damien Chazelle because he has The Eddie coming out.
Yes.
Well, the craziest thing about that list that we put out when Sean posted that poll is that none of those 4 names are, in a weird way, like when we started the show 2 years ago, if you put those 4 names in front of us, we would have told you there's no possible way that we will have any of these names ever even know what Real Blend is. They wouldn't even get to them from their publicists. And 2 years fast forwarding, the fact that those 4 names are legitimately people that we could potentially have on our show. And now, again, we've never had Nolan, we've never had Fincher, but they're not names that seem as distant as they would have 2 years ago. And then what Sean's referring to, we play around with our listeners a little bit with the poll, which was kind of cool. When I posted the IMAX camera, that basically brought it down to 2 people because only Chazelle and Nolan have ever used that camera in a feature film that we've seen, because Fincher and Tarantino have not. Now, Tarantino...
Didn't Tarantino put some Hateful Eight stuff in?
So Hateful Eight was shot completely on 65 millimeter film. It was not 65 millimeter IMAX. So I'll briefly just explain that. So in Dunkirk, when you were watching Dunkirk and it went from the full IMAX back down to the scenes with Mark Rylance in the boat, that's 65 millimeter, but not IMAX. So what ends up happening is you project that film in 70 millimeter, or you project it in 70 millimeter IMAX, and the IMAX shots will blow up. So Hateful Eight was shot basically with a similar type of camera that Nolan used for the non-IMAX shots in Dunkirk.
All right. Well, we got to get to Damien's interview because you guys are not prepared for how legitimately cool the conversation was. I mean, it's someone who we've been getting on the show for a really long time. We jumped at the opportunity with him having the 2 episodes of The Eddie, which is a great series on Netflix that you guys definitely need to check out. But a reminder, first off, let me get to the plugs. We have a community page over on Facebook, and it's real. Every time I go back to that, I check in with it every couple of days. And I see new voices all the time of people who are chiming in, sharing things on there, getting involved in the conversation. I love that that's growing to become the community that it is. Head over to Facebook and search for Real Blend Podcast Community. If you're watching us right now, you know that we are posting our episodes to Cinema Blend's YouTube page. And that is, in addition, I've seen the numbers on that one go up week after week too. In addition to putting the entire show up, the video team at Cinema Blend does an amazing job of cutting up the interviews independently too. And we're doing a really good job of sharing those and promoting them. And of course, we are available all the places where you can get your favorite, on all of your favorite podcast apps where you download all your stuff. Subscribe, write a review if you can. That really helps us get the word out there. Share us with a friend who wants to see it either on Facebook or listen to the podcast, and just keep spreading the word about Real Blend. We're really thrilled when you guys get to do that, because every single time that we raise our numbers and we get more awareness on the studio side, it helps us get guests like Damien Chazelle. And really, yes, during quarantine, we've been pretty lucky to throw out, some fishing hooks and get people. Josh Trank coming on for Capone and spending as much time as he did. Getting Ben Schwartz, to just come on and talk about Sonic. Michael Shannon doing it from his house. All these people who are just willing to come on the podcast and hang out and chill. That's what Damien did. Like, Damien knew he had the Eddie. I didn't see him do a lot of press for it. Kevin got a press release for it, threw it out there to him, and he jumped at the chance. And so I want to throw it right to our interview, and we'll talk about it on the other side about how we think it went. But it's just a fun conversation, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy it, where we talk about Whiplash and La La Land and First Man and all this great stuff, including his work in the Eddie. So without further ado, the Real Blend podcast interview with patron saint Damien Chazelle.
All right. Well, first of all, Damien, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much.
Nice to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you too. And it's funny, last time I saw you, we were in DC at the First Man premiere, and your dad came up to me and said he watched my First Man interviews with you, which I thought was really, really awesome.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Oh man, I hope he didn't harass you or anything.
Dude, your mom and dad are awesome. I talked to them for a while at the premiere. But one thing before we get into like the actual interview questions, I just want to ask how you're doing right now creatively, because I feel like everybody's home at this moment. I feel like we have more time, but at the same time, I feel like it's hard to get motivated sometimes. I'm just curious for you as an artist, creatively, how you are at the moment.
It's weird. Yeah. I think the first few days or weeks because we were prepping a movie. So suddenly when it was kind of, okay, we're going on hiatus, it felt like there was time on our hands, but then it kind of quickly stopped being the case because it catches up with you once you, like, we've got a kid here and no child care and no kind of not much house care other, than what we're doing. And so suddenly, and a dog, and it just kind of, I feel like I have less time than ever, actually.
Yeah,
so
we completely agree with you. We say it all the time.
It's weird.
So I want to talk to you about
it's weird. It's almost this this misperception about quarantine. I think that everyone's like, wait a minute, I thought at least I'd get like a lot of free time out of this, like it'd be vacation. It's like, no, not even that.
I think we're working harder.
Yeah.
Damien, I was gonna
weird.
I was gonna make a short film 2 months ago, and I still haven't started writing it. I've been sitting here. That's how it is.
Well, but you're still doing the show and everything, right? Like you basically have to like learn how to now do it from home or something.
Yeah, Jake and I both broadcast from our homes. And we all have been watching the Eddie, and obviously we love your work. And one of the things that I love about you is your use of oneers. The oneer at the opening of La La Land, that 6-minute oneer. Then you have a beautiful oneer in the beginning of the Eddie. And I was just curious, as a filmmaker, what you want the audience to take away by opening your show or your movie with a oneer. Is it an immersion tool? How do you see that in your mind as a filmmaker? Is it a grabbing the audience and not letting them go with an edit kind of thing?
Yeah, I guess it's it depends, but I guess in terms of like when you're actually opening a movie with it, I think, or a show with it, it's I always like to kind of have a very concrete, deliberate choice as to what the first image you're seeing is, and then once you've kind of chosen what the first image you're seeing, because I always think you have an audience in a very privileged position at the very beginning of something. It's the only time that you really have their complete, undivided attention, and that it's the only time that you have them under your spell because they don't yet know if you're going to fuck up or not. Like it's like the black before any movie. For all you know, that movie could be Citizen Kane. You don't know, so it's like it's the promise. And I think a lot of movies or shows seem to sort of it's sort of a sad thing to not take advantage of that, So it just feels like you want to make a choice about, a sort of deliberate choice about how you're opening. And also, then I think by that same token, what your first cut is. It's not just what your first image is, but what your first cut is. So it doesn't mean necessarily that you just delay that first cut, though that's what I've done in those two instances. Sometimes it means that your first cut comes pretty quickly, but it has to have meaning. That's the first cut of your movie. So it's the first time your image is going to cut from one to the other. So it just, that's probably the kind of thinking that sometimes I think with the Eddie, I hadn't initially planned it being a oneer. I think it was just when I started mapping out the shots or the movement of the camera with the music, and I couldn't quite figure out a natural place to cut where it would feel elegant to cut. So it just kind of, then it sort of revealed itself as, I guess I can only cut once the song is over. So,
cool. Damien, I didn't expect to be as moved by this aspect of the episodes that you did, which is the communal aspect of a jazz club. Everybody getting together, everyone collaborating, people just coming in to sit back and relax and enjoy music. And it made me realize how much I miss it right now in the moment.
Yeah.
Can you just talk about that a little bit, about how, not that we're rushing back to anything, but maybe how much you've come to appreciate the communal nature of live music, the movie theater experience, now that we don't have it at our fingertips.
Yeah. I've gone through the same sort of process where I didn't really realize when making the show that aspect would suddenly seem, when it came out, like a memory.
Yeah.
It's not like, as you see in the show, it's not like jazz clubs, were, raking in the dough before coronavirus hit either. So it's, I think it always feels extra kind of hard, when it's, art forms or venues for art forms that feel maybe a little bit fragile to begin with when they're sort of dealt a blow like this. But by the same token, one can hope that, you know, what comes out the other end is maybe some sort of renewed appreciation for something that is very easy to take for granted when it is at your fingertips. So, you know, we'll see what happens. But I think right now there's a lot of like self-reflection and people kind of maybe thinking through or realizing sort of what this is going to sound like very overly grandiloquent, but sort of what makes us human. You know, the idea that like humans like to be together. Humans are social animals. I say that as a very antisocial person, but I recognize that humans are social animals, and that means that the human that human art has a social component to it. Not always, but that there's certain art forms that need to have a social component to them, and so, you know, music, especially jazz, has to have the live component to it. You're missing the whole end of the equation if all you have is these sort of solo recorded experience. And I think the same is true with movies, obviously. And I think that's also why these things last maybe longer than it feels like historically they'd be warranted to. You'd think that live music would have been killed by the phonograph, you know, 100 plus years ago, 150 years ago, and it clearly wasn't. So yeah. So it's, but it's always interesting to have that kind of moment where where you're forced to stop and think about, okay, these things that maybe I thought I didn't need, or maybe that I took for granted, thinking about what they might mean to us as a society.
Yeah.
Damien, thinking about just jazz clubs and watching the Eddie and then recently rewatching La La Land, I gotta be honest, a lot of times when celebrities open up restaurants, I kind of roll my eyes a little bit. This action star will open up this chain or whatever. And in Chicago, anyone who was ever a Chicago Bull or a Chicago Bear has a steakhouse. Like it's just a thing. But I gotta be honest, if there was a Damien Chazelle jazz club, I would be first in line to go see that. I know, like, you're obviously a fan of live music, and jazz clubs have been a part of your work. Has there ever been a thought process where you thought it would be really cool to own a jazz club?
Actually, no, I never. I've thought it'd be cool to own or run a movie theater. The jazz club, man, that's daunting. That's daunting even for me. I would say the better person to sort of pick up the baton on that would be Glenn Ballard, whose brainchild this show really was. It sort of started with him, I think, having a kind of utopian idea in his head as a musician himself who'd spent a lot of time in Paris, of you know, what a contemporary youthful jazz club in Paris that kind of mixes American and French, and then by that token a whole bunch of other nationalities into one sort of space, what that would feel like, what that would be like. So but it was funny because by the end of shooting, or I wasn't there for the whole shoot, but by the end of at least my episodes, you know, it's the club was the one fictional set in the show. Everything else we were shooting in real apartments or real restaurants. The club was a set, you know, that wasn't there before. And that was mainly because we had to do so many things with it. We had to spend so much time there. Couldn't really shut down a real club for that long with the money we had. And we also had to record the music live. So we had to have a sort of apparatus. We wanted to record the music live. So it had to basically function as a recording studio at the same time, you know, with sort of mics cabled into sound engineer rooms in the back that you wouldn't see. So, wow. So we kind of spent all this time living in this place that we had kind of constructed, or that the production design team and sound team had constructed. And it felt like a club by the end. It sort of felt like, I wish... You know, we all knew that it would shut its doors as soon as the shoot was over, you know, the way all film sets do, and sort of wished it wouldn't be the case. So who knows? Maybe there's some way to resuscitate that.
We'd all be there, man.
Yeah, we would all definitely be there.
Pandemic. Yeah. Okay, great. We've got three tickets sold. I think that's a good economic proposition.
I always geek out with you about your use of film. I loved that you used 35 on La La Land. I think you did 16, 35, and 65 on First Man. And obviously here you're shooting Super 16, which looks absolutely gorgeous. Like just the grain is just swimming on the screen. It's like I always say, it's awesome. And I love it because it gives it this beautiful...
You love the stuff that this is a lot of other people hate that I have to fight. Always fighting for 16 in my life.
I think 16 is a character in the show because the actual grain is part of the movement, especially in your Wonder in the beginning, as we're just going throughout the club in the Super 16. It is just gorgeous to watch. And it feels like you're almost watching someone's real footage of a real life event and almost like a docu style, the way you shoot it. I was just curious as a filmmaker, how you decide what like types of film you're going to use for a project. So how do you decide 35 will be used for La La Land, that you're going to use 16, 35, and 65 for First Man, but Super 16 here? What is the decision process as a filmmaker and a storyteller?
Yeah, I mean, it does kind of ideally want to tailor itself to the, to the individual project, to the story. I think 16 is the one area where I'm probably always going to try to find an excuse to shoot 16 if I think it could at all justify itself, just because I love it personally so much. And it's sort of what I began shooting on. So that, that's a kind of, it's like you love your first toy or something. It's like that kind of thing. So here with this show, it actually wound up being the hardest thing to sort of get through the transom, because Netflix is very not into 16 or anything that's not sort of super sharp, clean digital. So getting them over the hump was a thing. But to their credit, they did let me do it at the end. And then I think. But I think it was sort of the thing you're describing was kind of what I was going for, I guess, was just it feels a little tactile. It feels a little, I like feeling the physicality of it. And so I guess it's like, I like feeling the fact that you're shooting film. And of course, one of the things when you start getting into really larger gauge formats is you lose a little bit. You gain resolution, but you lose a little bit that sense of actually being aware of it's like thicker brush. I like paintings with nice thick brush strokes, and you go up close and you actually see the daub of paint, and you can imagine, the painter really carving it in. The physicality of that I love. But it doesn't make sense, at least to me, it didn't make sense for stuff like La La Land or something like that, which I wanted to be.
But you had 16 in First Man in the house scenes, right? That was 16.
Well, First Man was a case more like The Eddie, where I conceived of that as a 16 movie for the most part, and then we were going to build up to. It was sort of going to be like build up to the moon as the contrast. We're trying to figure out some way, how do you make the moon feel alien? And it felt like, well, make people live in a grain swimmy 16 millimeter world for 2 hours and then show them IMAX. And that'll just kind of, it'll be like going from color to black and white and Wizard of Oz or She's Gotta Have It or something like that. So that was the idea there. The fact that a lot of the movie wound up being on 35 was a practical thing, because we found that the 16 close up when we were in the capsules was such a, 16 falls apart so much once you get wide, but you're never wide in the capsules. So we realized, okay, you know what? Actually, it'll match better if we do 35 to perf, sort of the closest to 16 you can get 35 to when you're wider, which is what you are on Earth, basically, or how we are in the houses and things like that. Yeah. So that was just a little bit, but we went back and forth on that. I mean, initially we planned to shoot it all in 16, except for the moon. We wound up shooting a mix, everything in capsules in 16, and then some of the stuff in the houses 16, some of it 35 to perf, just to hold up a little bit better. We didn't want to give people too much of a headache, and then IMAX.
Yeah, well, I love the First Man Blu-ray because it does actually take your aspect ratio as we get to the moon and goes. It's so freaking awesome. Does? Oh, hell yeah, dude. I put it on my 4K TV and it jumps from the 35 and your image blows fully up to the full frame in the IMAX.
There's something weird on that's great. I don't know if it does it on maybe it does it on like iTunes, but I just looked at Dunkirk the other day, and it was all fucking cropped. If you if you get Dunkirk on iTunes, and then I looked on message boards, and it wasn't just me. It's like literally the only version that I know of that they have on iTunes is 240 the whole time. It's insane.
That's a big problem because Nolan, that's the cool thing about Dark Knight and Interstellar and everything, is that he preserved those ratios, and your 4K does that. I mean, if you put this into a 4K player, it goes boom. It's awesome.
Nolan says he really wants you to watch it on your phone. That's what he prefers. He says if you could just take Dunkirk and put it on your Apple Watch.
It's really what it's meant for. Yeah.
The way God intended.
That's how I feel. I hope you watched First Man on your phone, Kevin.
Of course, on my iPod.
Damien, my memory of First Man is seeing it at TIFF at the Planetarium IMAX.
Were you in the? That's great.
I was
That's
at that
fun.
auditorium. So when you talk about it opening up, that was one of the most incredible memories I'm ever going to have.
The doors.
Oh, cool.
Oh, it's so fun.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. That was fun.
So I want to talk about endings just for a second, because you have 3 feature films with 3 absolutely perfect endings. And I think endings are one of the hardest things in the world to do.
Thank you.
You nail the culmination, the emotional culmination of all the journeys that you've chosen to go on. I'm curious with the Eddie, if it's freeing to be able to pass the baton and not have to stick the landing.
Well, this was so different in the sense that, but in a nice way for me, kind of as an experiment in, just working alongside other directors. It was such a different thing. So, I might have felt a little more hesitation if I didn't feel as much confidence in the person I was handing the baton to.
Right.
But I was working alongside this director, Uda Benyamina, a French director, who's tremendous, and who had her own just kind of, completely unique to her take on the material. And so I think early on, it kind of became clear to me and all of us that the way to approach this was not as like, well, ideally this would have been all done by one director. How some shows kind of, obviously some shows are all one director, but that's become such a thing these days that a lot of shows that aren't, it feels like sometimes they wish they were. Yeah. And here it was a little bit more like, okay, we're going to set out a certain, a certain palette at the beginning that, yes, the rest of the show is going to want to swim in a little bit, but only very loosely. And that each episode was kind of highlight a different character, and each director was ideally going to kind of put their own stamp on it. So for me, I just felt like I was making my little, I guess quarter of the piece. And then it felt like a relay race where it's sort of, I would take my material up to where it sort of naturally ended, and then just pass the baton off, knowing that it would be in good hands, but also in different hands. That was actually the differences between each thing were part of the appeal, or at least the hope. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Damien, you obviously, it goes without saying that you have such a great ear for music, and I'm just sort of curious about what your experience is when you just casually listen to music at home. Like, do you have the ability to sort of turn off the switch? Because I'd imagine that to a certain degree, you hear music, and not that you're picking it apart, but I picture that I don't know if you've seen that gif of Zach Galifianakis from The Hangover, where like geometry is swirling in front of his face. I was, how you kind of are almost. No. It's just this
that
idea.
Sounds great.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Wait, but is that? Oh, I think I remember that moment. That's in the first Hangover.
Yeah. It's like sort of his Rain Man moment. Yeah,
it's his Rain Man moment.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's great.
And so I was just wondering,
John Nash, like.
Yeah, exactly. I was wondering if you sort of, whenever you listen to music, are you always sort of listening for the potential to one day maybe be able to utilize it cinematically, or do you have to sort of, turn off a certain part of your brain to be able to just casually enjoy music?
Well, it's a fun part of the brain, so I never really kind of want to turn it off. I guess it does. What gets to be a problem, I think, sometimes is if I'm on, because it does sort of conjure up stuff for me. So if I'm trying to focus on one project and there's music that does not feel like it speaks to that project and maybe makes me want to go off and do another project, then I have to sort of rid that from my life a little bit temporarily. So I guess it's the same thing with movies too. I'll try to like only watch certain kinds of movies if I'm in a certain state of mind or working on a certain kind of project. So I mean, a lot of directors do this, but I'll wind up just kind of early on, even sometimes before I'm even writing, just creating playlists and stuff for myself that are just going to play. while I'm thinking or writing or whatever about that project. So that becomes a little bit the soundtrack for myself. And it's not necessarily music that's in the piece. It's also not even necessarily, you know, for the Eddie, for instance, I was listening to a lot of not just jazz, but a lot of, you know, modern French pop and like 60s yeah, you know, sort of rock and roll. Nice. And like you know, and then a lot of jazz from different eras as well. So it doesn't have to be 1-to-1 in terms of what I'm shooting in the show, but it just helps me get in the frame of mind. So I guess music. But I'm always listening to music, so I'm definitely not always going into a full blown, like every song gets me going, and then this would be shooting that, you know, it's like definitely not that. It's more just about the overall emotion, you know, and it can be so helpful if I need to access an emotion that I'm trying to just be in for, say, a scene I'm trying to write or a shot I'm trying to get. Can be so helpful. Just that there's nothing like just that piece of music, that needle drop to just put me there, you know.
That's awesome.
Which of course is how it is for everyone, really, to a certain extent, you know. It's kind of sort of the way music can cut through.
Yeah.
Well, Damien, I'm gonna skip the question I was gonna ask you and ask you this, because you just mentioned needle drop. We play games on our show a lot every week, like that are like our show's called Reel Blend, REEL. So we do like, you know, we'll do like Chazelle blend, or we'll do like Coen Brothers blend, or whatever who we're talking about that week. We did a needle drop blend on our show a few weeks back, and we all chose our favorite moment where a music cue hits in a film and drives you through the scene. What would your choice be for that?
So would that be then like a needle drop where it's a pre-exist, not score, but like a
correct, an existing song?
Yeah, I chose Tiny Dancer and Almost Famous.
Yeah, that's beautiful when they're singing on the bus. And,
I went with Under Pressure from Grosse Pointe Blank.
That's great. Needle drop. I would say, and maybe this is also like a personal thing, because I remember when it came out, and just talking about sticking the landing, for me, the Baby You're a Rich Man at the end of Social Network.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Yes.
It's
perfect.
It's so good. It's so good because you would think it wouldn't. You'd think it would. Normally, I have such an allergy to needle drops where the lyrics feel like they're explicitly commenting on the action. I hate that so much, you know, where someone's like sad and then there's a sad song going, I'm lonely. You know, it's like, oh God. So you'd think like, oh my God, how could you? It feels like groan inducing. You're going to end the Social Network with like the title card, he's the youngest billionaire, with like Baby You're a Rich Man. And then on top of that, I love the Beatles. It's never been my favorite Beatles song. Right. At least until the Social Network came out. And like something, I don't know what it was, about where my emotions were at the end of that movie. And then that hitting, first coming up under the pushing on Mark, and then hitting with the cut to black and the credits roll. It just was like, it gave that song and the movie, like the greatest needle drops are where both song and movie come out ahead, you know, where that song was made better by that for me. And certainly the movie was made better by that. They literally a wonderful, just kind of conjoining that you wouldn't think would work.
David Fincher can direct a movie. He really knows how to direct a movie.
And I realized that this kid Fincher was going places.
I think Sean, did I choose Stuck in the Middle with You from Reservoir Dogs? I think I did.
Believe you did.
K. Billy Super Sounds. Yeah.
That's pretty iconic.
That sounds right.
And again, speaking of like a needle drop, that you can't hear that song the same way anymore. You know, it's just.
Damien, also, if you miss us when we're finished, we actually just recorded our very first commentary track for where the three of us sit down and chat about a movie, and we actually did the Social Network for our first film. So
oh, that's so fun. Yeah. So you guys do, where do you find those? Are those like on YouTube, on the website?
We have it on YouTube or wherever you can download podcasts.
Do you do the whole movie?
We did the whole movie. Yeah. So
that's awesome.
You cue it up to when we start, and then it's just us idiots talking over David Fincher and Aaron Sorkin, as you should.
That's great. I love it.
We'll do one of yours next. It's weird for us to have you on. I'd have to sort of gush just for a little bit, because when we started this show, it was 2 years ago. We started it around the time of the Oscar season. We called ourselves Awards Blend when we started. We just knew the three of us wanted to do something together. You guys were in the thick of First Man coming out. We were covering a lot of those films, but
Yeah.
we've been such huge fans of your work. Whiplash and La La Land were my number ones the year that they came out. I actually we did the best of the decade. I picked La La Land for the best of the past decade. I mean, it's just your talent blows us away. We christened you a patron saint of the show, and I mean,
Literally.
on a yes. Whenever
You
we
were
talk about
christened.
Damien Chazelle, we would say patron
This is
saint.
so great. This is going to make Kevin. You've made my Catholic parents very happy. My French Catholic family is doing high jumps right
We'd
now.
make the sign of the cross. We'd mention
Yes.
Damien Chazelle, patron saint.
So that means I can baptize kids now.
Yes, you have
Great.
to.
Dude, Nolan's on here every week baptizing kids. You gotta come on, man.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's right. I heard about
But
that.
it's got to be like in a bowl of film. It's just like you just dip them down into film and then bring them back.
We use these like 70 millimeter
that's great.
like air, land, and sea prints or something like that.
Yeah.
Just sort of put the baby in it.
But one of the games that we play, and we want you to play along with this too, is that we always have a Rushmore. We do our personal Rushmore of 4 directors who just, they're infallible, essentially. And we have this, all 3 of us have like 3 that are locks, and that 4th one shifts constantly. We're always like, oh God, maybe it's this person. If you had your 4 Rushmore directors, who would you go with? Now, again, this is papal law from a patron saint.
Oh, great. So it's just going to be carved right away.
Instantaneous.
So this just living or dead?
Yes. Yeah. Anyway.
So just all time. Well, yeah, it's kind of like, it's a better way of asking, like, what your favorite films are, favorite film directors. It's like, the problem is I'm going to give a different answer every week, probably. I'd say right now, if you asked me, Chaplin is always in there for me. And then it starts to waffle. I think Chaplin, Dreyer, Hitchcock.
Definitely. That's the only one.
Let's see, and Wells. Yeah, okay. Chaplin, Dreyer, Hitchcock, Wells, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know.
My Mount Rushmore feels so superficial now.
Oh yeah, does my Mount Rushmore beat your Mount Rushmore?
I think on the playground your Mount Rushmore would beat up my Mount Rushmore.
It's hilarious.
Jake has whoever did the Final Destination series.
Hey, I like the Final Destination series.
Me too.
Hey, those series are those movies. I haven't seen all of them, but some of them are kind of brilliant.
Dude,
like very
that freeway scene.
They're like music. Well, they are like musicals. It's just like perfect little dance numbers with the. Are you talking about the freeway scene where like the log goes through the coffee cup and the log? I mean, it's what's not to love? It's pretty great.
It's brilliant.
They are about to redo the DVD cover and put that quote from Damien Chazelle.
You guys have to do a commentary on that.
You should come on and do it with us. We'll do a Final Destination commentary with you.
That'll be I'll be the guest slot. That's perfect.
All right, Damien. I think they're telling us our time is up at this moment, but we want to say thank you for joining us.
Thank you guys.
We really appreciate you so much.
Hope you guys are hanging in. You seem like you are. Good spirits.
Okay, so obviously, Damien was the answer to the poll. And but it is worth noting that the winner of the poll was Christopher Nolan. And I think we're okay to say, like, Kevin doesn't like us to say stuff because it's always like, if it happens, if it happens. But what I can say, I think, is that, well, I'm just going to say that we are, of course, trying to get Nolan for Tenet. Like, if and when Tenet becomes a movie, because we know it's going to be a movie, Warner Brothers is a studio that likes this show. That's not saying too much. They gave us the director of Scoob, which was another fantastic interview. Clearly, Warner Brothers is the one that gave us
Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah, and we came out of that, and they gave us Todd Phillips. So they like Roblend, and they have the new Christopher Nolan. So I think there's a possibility that sooner or later, the vote getter in our poll might end up being on Roblend. Jake, you're laughing.
I'm just laughing because I love that you went from like, they gave us the director of Scoob. Naturally, we're gonna get Christopher Nolan.
Of course.
Tony Cervoni was really good, though.
No, I listened to that interview. That was a great interview. I wish you could have taken part of it.
I'll say this about Chazelle. I mean, what was cool about that interview for me personally was just talking to him about like film stock. I mean, or film gauge. Like he was very, very big into the different filming, and I love how he had to fight for the super 16 millimeter he wanted to use in the Eddie. And that just goes to show you that, you know, when you're a director, you could easily go the digital route if you want, but if you really care about the work you're working on, you're going to shoot it on the format that you want it to look the best on. I mean, it's the same reason why Snyder shoots film, and Sean and I were geeking out about Man of Steel today and how the grain looked and how beautiful it looked on 35. So I think with Chazelle is just one of the greatest filmmakers working today. And I rewatched La La Land over the weekend, and it just brought such joy into my mind. I've been inside for 2.5 months, not complaining, very lucky to be working from home. But to see people dancing on a freeway in Los Angeles with all these different colors and like the big beautiful wonder and the song, it just gave me a big jolt. It just jolted me. It gave me, I don't know, it just gave me more life watching that movie. And you know, we've discussed this a lot on the show before about the way he uses bittersweet endings and the reality of La La Land, and how as heightened as that film really is, it is a very grounded piece of work and very, very relatable material. But honestly, that was a big deal to have him on. And thank you so much to his PR team and obviously Netflix for helping us set that up, because that meant so much to us. And your La La Land was #1 of the decade for Sean. So that was a really big deal to have him on our show. But hopefully, maybe he'll come back on for Final Destination. I would love so much to do a Final Destination 2 commentary with him. And what I loved about him, there was a moment in that interview, and this is my favorite moment of the whole interview, and then I'll shut up. But essentially, there's a moment in the interview where Damien, all he says is that the one where the log goes through the window in Final Destination 2 or something along those lines? And I stopped for a second and said to myself, Damien's our age. He probably had the same filming experiences that we did. Like he probably saw Final Destination.
It felt like we were talking to a dude. Like it just felt like we were just talking to like one of us. Like if we were sitting at a table and we were trying to figure out which Final Destination was. Like it didn't feel like we were talking to the Academy Award-winning director of La La Land. It felt like we were all just hanging out trying to figure out which Final Destination was which.
But that was the weird moment for me where the interview became like a little bit surreal. Yeah. Like it's funny because when you're doing an interview, and you could probably tell this in our interviews sometimes, and it's just the way we're operating as interviewers and hosts. You go into interview mode and then you go into conversation mode, and there's two completely different modes there. If you actually listen to the interview, I'll call myself out. In the beginning of the interview, we were just chatting with Damien, and then you can actually clearly hear me switch to questions of topic for what we have him on for. And Gabe's always talking about this idea of making these more conversational, which I completely agree with him on. Like you want these conversations to be more fluid versus just back and forth answers. But at the end of the interview, when he said the log through the window, that was the moment where it almost like struck me. I'm like, we're just like Jake just said, we're just talking to a friend. Like this guy is us. He just happens to be an Oscar-winning filmmaker who directed La La Land, Whiplash, and First Man. He happens to be one of the best filmmakers working today, probably ever. So that was a really cool moment to have him. Just want to say thank you.
Also, it's funny you mentioned La La Land. I instead watched Whiplash in preparation, and it's not filling me with joy. It's quite the opposite, actually. It's one of the most stress-inducing films ever. My takeaway from the conversation with Damien was that how much thought he put into his openings, and how he's like that comment from him.
Yeah,
I never once heard a director talk about that or thought of the significance of those opening minutes of the only time where I am guaranteed to have your full attention. And just that, in basketball, they call it court awareness, right? Just to have that court awareness about how his movie plays blows my mind.
Because
Chazelle, still at his age.
Chazelle comes from a camp of directors that genuinely care about the audience's immersion in their stories. It's the same reason why Nolan shoots his movies the way he does. It's the same reason why Snyder shoots the movies the way he does. Spielberg, Abrams. These are all filmmakers and Tarantino who are very, very detail oriented about you watching their film and never losing suspension of disbelief. And what Damien says there at the beginning, Sean's exactly right. I've never heard a filmmaker explain it like that. Like he has your undivided attention before an actual visual cut takes place. Now he has 3 stitches in that opening oneer on the freeway. They're not too obvious. Like you'll see him flip the camera one way, or you'll go through like a car door or something like that. But they're not obvious edits, just like 1917, I guess you would put it in the same regard. But this is a 6-minute oneer with 3 stitches in it. And like Sean just said, he has your full undivided attention for those 6 minutes. Now, when he finally cuts the scene for you visually as the audience, then it's the decision on you to stay with it. And I think that's the powerhouse of an opening will define your entire viewing experience. And that opener is exactly what he wants to say, and it completely complements the rest of the film.
His opening scene in First Man.
The opening of First... Wow, I don't remember. I'm off the top of my head, the opening of First Man... Oh, opening of First Man is when Gosling is doing a test run into space. Isn't that this... And he's up there and he crashes.
Stratosphere. And
yeah.
Then, okay, all right. That's right. I was trying to...
I think so. Because there's two of those. There's one later, but I believe the opening is him doing some kind of test run that eventually leads him to a accident. Yeah.
Gabe says correct. All right. Let's move into news. And today was a day. So today, Zack Snyder hosted a Man of Steel watch party on Vero. And the end result is that the Snyder Cut is coming to HBO Max. Now, I said this to the boys before we even started. I have no intention of this podcast becoming a Snyder Cut podcast. Like, so much of my life is consumed by this, because if you don't know yet, if you haven't heard...
Look at your shirt.
Yeah. Look at my shirt. Look at my hat.
God, you're like me with my Metallica shirt. Like, get over it already. Jesus.
I am writing a book about the Snyder Cut movement. I'm writing about the history of the Snyder Cut, what happened, why Zack left, why he was replaced by Joss Whedon. And then the people who have been fighting for Zack's version to be restored. And the people in the hashtag Release the Snyder Cut movement stand for, in their own words, artistic integrity and the vision of a filmmaker being supported by the studio who backed him. And also mental awareness, mental health awareness, suicide prevention. The reason why Zack left Justice League in the first place in 2017 is because his daughter Autumn committed suicide. He thought he could work his way through it, that the work would distract him. The opposite happened. He needed to be around his family, and he was replaced by Joss Whedon. And so that story, in my opinion, has never really been put together in one place. And also trying to figure out, like, why all these people, these fans, dedicated all their time and their money and their resources, and for the past 2.5 years, why they have fought so hard for this Release the Snyder Cut campaign. And so the story has been coming together. And I never knew, like, the only comparison, or the closest comparison that you could think of on the DC side of it, it was the Richard Donner cut, where Richard Donner, when he was filming the original Superman, filmed the footage for Superman and Superman 2 at the same time. But at some point, he had to stop the work on Superman 2 because he needed to finish Superman to get it ready for its theatrical cut, so it was unfinished. In the interim of when that first movie came out and before he could get back to the sequel, he fell out with the producers. Like, they just had several disagreements, a lot about how much money should be spent on the sequel. They were notoriously tight budgeted, and Donner would not go forward with the work that they wanted to do on the sequel. And so he was replaced by a guy named Richard Lester, and Richard Lester finished Superman 2. And then the fans fought for Donner's cut, and the Donner cut of Superman 2 finally came out on DVD in 2006, I want to say that it was. So it was a 25-year gap. And that could have happened to Snyder. Like, he literally could have had to wait 25 years before the studio agreed to let him release his cut. But we now know that it's coming to HBO Max in 2021, which means that this book that I've been planning, which was also due to hit in 2021, has a satisfying ending. And no, I don't need to see what the Snyder Cut is, because the book became more about the movement. And were they ever going to get to hear that their efforts paid off? And today was the day that their efforts paid off. And it was just, it was beautiful. It was truly beautiful. It was a fantastic, fantastic day.
Yeah, Sean and I watched it together. Snyder did this amazing thing where we watched Man of Steel all together. He had his storyboards books. Sean and I did the same thing for BVS. It was awesome. And Man of Steel, you know, Jake, we all love this movie. It's such a great film. But to watch it with him live, talking about it with storyboards, two things I wanted to bring up. One, today was a really eye-opening day for me specifically, where I always understood how important this movement was and how important it was to Sean and kind of why he was telling the story. And, you know, the book is about the fight to save the movie, not the end result of what the movie ends up being. which is what Sean, I think, was trying to say. And so what's interesting about the storyline is today I'm on this live stream, and Snyder brings up Henry Cavill and brings up all these longtime fans of, Justice League and Snyder's movies. And I asked, Sean, I'm like, Sean, who are these people? And he goes, oh, these are the diehard fans who have been with the movement since the beginning. And this was my first time visually seeing these people. So to watch them talk to Snyder and Cavill about their love of what that movie meant and what the movement is meant to them was just like, it was tear jerking. I mean, I was genuinely moved by every aspect of it, because these are the people talking directly to the filmmaker who affected their lives in some way. And that to me was a beautiful thing to watch. And the second thing I wanted to mention, I want to get Sean's and Jake's opinion on this. Some of the backlash on social media is whether or not the artistic integrity element of it is very interesting debate. Whether or not fandom should change a movie, or fandom should, in any way, shape, or form release a different cut of a film because fans were complaining. I think this film is in a separate boat from that. I mean, if a movie came out and the director was not replaced and the movie just ended up being bad and they were asking for another cut of it, I feel like that's crossing a line. You already put your movie out the way you wanted to put it out. There was no director replacement. This is a situation where Snyder's movie was completely changed, as Sean will tell you. I mean, Joss Whedon stepped in, shot scenes that completely threw off the look of the movie. It threw off everything. And Sean and I have had discussions. You can actually pinpoint moments, literally, when Whedon steps in. The opening scene is all Whedon. The opening song, which I don't know if that's Whedon. I hate that opening song. I don't know. It's a terrible song. But the point I want to make, and I want to get your opinion on, is in this particular case, I thought this was completely legitimate, and it had to happen because of artistic integrity. Snyder never made the movie he wanted to make, or never put out the movie he wanted to put out. What's wrong with letting him do that? I mean, he was replaced. How is that make a problem with fandom? I know people are saying, oh, this is going to be a slippery slope. Is this going to happen for a bunch of other movies? Look at Sonic the Hedgehog, things like that. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on fandom in general? I think this was a right thing to do, not a wrong thing. I don't think it goes backwards at all.
Jakey, you got a take on it?
Honestly, this is one of those situations where I kind of just want to sit back. I kind of want you to take this and run with it, because I feel like this is your thing. I'm more interested in hearing what you have to say about it.
Yeah, to me, it's a completely isolated case. But the way that I compare it is, this is supposed to be, for DC fans, the first time that the characters that they love the most, the Justice League, was going to be united on screen. They got a tease of it in BVS with the Trinity, which is Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman, and small cameo teases of Aquaman, Flash, and Cyborg. But they were getting, and the way that I compare it, it's really funny. Like, it took a long time for me to win over the Snyder Cut fans, because they're a very protective group, and they expect to be almost mocked because they've been treated really poorly on social media and in the press for even asking for this cut, right? But the way that I tried to explain it to them was like, look, guys, I'm a Marvel kid, like, I've got the Avengers movies over my shoulder. Like, that's who I grew up. I read DC Comics too, but not a ton. I read mostly Marvel. And then I'll put it in a way that Jake will appreciate as well too. If I knew that an Avengers movie was coming, and not even the first one, but like Infinity War or Endgame, I knew it was coming. I couldn't wait to see it. Before it opened, they replaced the Russo brothers for whatever reason. And then they hired, the guy who directs McG. Perfect. Yeah, perfect. McG. But they said, don't worry. Look, the Russos had a tragedy, but McGee's going to come in. He's just going to finish their tone. He's going to just complete what the Russos had set up. And then you watched it, and it was like nothing like the Russos would do at all. Like, it was like bad jokes and digital CGI and just a complete sort of monstrosity. You'd say, wait a second, I want to see what the Russos did. Where's that Russo version? Like, they were, and that he was done with, like, Zach was done with filming. He was in post-production. The cast had shot pictures like ready for the wrap party, like they were far enough along. Or Jake, I'll put it in the perspective of the way that you were coming at it. Rise of Skywalker, right? Culmination of this 40-year saga. JJ's coming back. He did Force Awakens. I can't believe it. It's amazing. You know, like, I can't wait to see what he does. He finishes filming of it. They're heading into post-production. He has a tragedy. And they look around and they're like, "Ooh, who are we going to get to finish it off?" And they pick a random and stuff it in there.
Ron Howard.
Ron Howard. And then you watch it and it's terrible, right? Wouldn't you immediately think?
Of course.
Oh, wait a second. What did you?
I want to play devil's advocate for 1 second. And I appreciate that you say that, like, this is an isolated case. And trust me, I have been cheering for this. I have massive respect for the movement and what it stands for, because it stands for something that's much bigger than just a movie. My fear that comes out of this is a little taste of what I have already started seeing on social media, which is now other directors' cuts being called for. I feel like to me, it's the equivalent of, like, we just finished running a marathon. And then you're over there, like, just puking your guts up. Your feet are bleeding. You're like, you feel like you want to die. And someone comes over and goes, "So we got another marathon that's starting tomorrow. You ready for it?" Like, can't we just enjoy? And I know that to a certain degree people are joking, but I also do think that, like, this is going to start potentially a dangerous precedent where, like, just because you don't like a movie doesn't mean that, like, there is another cut out. Like honestly, and Kevin tweeted or texted the group earlier, like, okay, like the Ayer cut. Like, yes, like, I fully believe that there's probably another David Ayer cut of Suicide Squad. But, like, I'm tired. Like,
I want to see it.
Like, I can't start this whole thing again. I can't start another hashtag movement, and I can't start another. I can't get invested in this again. Like, can't we just
Cats CGI buttholes?
That's going to Quibi. But, like, can't we just, like, breathe for a moment before, like, we start? That's to me the only downside coming out of this is that, like, it's just about to, like we put out one fire and 15 others are about to start getting ignited. Like, is that unfair to say?
It's fair to say, but I don't think that there are that many films where the production was messed with. That David Ayer, you could almost argue possibly, because he talks a lot about concept stuff that he wanted to go in a different direction. And it's funny, in a tangential sort of way, Ayer's cut was affected by what they did to Snyder, because David Ayer was supposed to have parademons in his movie, and he was supposed to have Steppenwolf. And then somewhere along the way, the executives that were making decisions on what they're going to do with Whedon on Justice League, they also looked at Ayer's cut at the same time, and they were like, well, he can't use Steppenwolf, we're going to use Steppenwolf over here. So they made him ramp up the Enchantress and take Joker out of his third act. So it's like, that was the waves that were rippling out from all of these decisions. But you're not going to turn around at, like, any other major film. You know, directors just, for the most part, don't shoot that much stuff that doesn't make it into the final product, you know?
But Ayer, I think David Ayer deserves a cut as release as well. And, like, to Jake's point and Sean's point, I don't think there are that many films that had problematic productions like that, especially with Justice League. The reason why I feel like this is an isolated incident that Sean just said is that problem, that set problem, ended up affecting other films. It affected the Mission Impossible film. It affected the removal of a mustache, which became a big joke. And so, to me, that's a film that deserves to be re-released. It's a film that earned that quality. Now, Rise of Skywalker, I like Rise of Skywalker. Jake liked Rise of Skywalker. If that got a re-release, I would have a problem with that. JJ made the movie, and he put the movie out. Yes, he did have to. But it's
not out of the ordinary. It's not unusual for studios to step in, and whether it's a ripple effect from another film or not. Like, look what happened to Josh Trank. Like, is there a Trank version? Is there a Trank cut of Fantastic Four? Like, it's not unusual.
Say that because I do think he's one of the other cases. He is one of the other.
I agree.
But, like, I'd imagine there are a lot of directors out there that would probably step up and go, like, okay, maybe it's not the Snyder Cut circumstances, but, like, the studio messed with my movie a little bit. Like I would argue, I would say that, like, the theatrical cut of Ridley Scott's Kingdom of Heaven is not a good movie. But have you ever seen his cut or even his cut of Blade Runner? Like, that probably happens a lot more than we think. It just doesn't come with the pomp and circumstance that the Snyder Cut had. I just don't want to do this every week.
I disagree. I'm actually completely down for this. I think this is a wake-up call for Hollywood to stop maneuvering and messing with directors' visions. I'm sorry.
See, that I'm down for. So, like, okay, like I'm all for like studios stepping back and letting filmmakers. What I'm not down for is a movie coming out and then the director like saying, 5 years later, wait, that's not the real version. Like, I can't let's try to get it right the first time.
But we're not talking about, that's a completely different situation. A movie coming out and then a director saying, oh, I have a different cut 5 years later is different than Zack Snyder being essentially leaving his movie, having another director come in.
I understand that like the circumstances are different, but this idea, and it's not the first time it's happened, it's not the last time it's going to happen, but the idea of people getting multiple shots at a movie is not something I want to become a regular thing.
But Snyder never got his shot. Snyder never got his shot at his movie.
No, I understand that. I get what you're saying. But what my argument is, what I don't want to happen is now every time film Twitter doesn't like a movie and they catch wind of some sort of studio involvement, which does happen a lot, not to the Snyder circumstances, but it does happen a lot, that they say, oh, okay, I want what the director was going to do.
Here's one thing that Snyder did that most won't do, I don't think, is he encouraged it. Also, whenever people lobbied to see his version of it, when he very easily could have said multiple times, like, guys, I've moved on, And I think in most cases, the directors move on. Mm-hmm. When we talked to Josh Trank for Capone, he was very open about his Fantastic Four stuff, but in no way did he make it clear, like, I want to revisit that and fix it. I get the impression that he's saying that's in my past. Yeah. Zach, I can tell you, has told me to my face he views that as a hole in his filmography and he wants to correct it. Yeah. I think a lot of the filmmakers, even if they were studio interference, it was a compromise during the creative process. The film came out. They're moving on to their next project. Zach was very adamant about wanting to fix this.
But Snyder was embarrassed. Snyder, when Justice League came out, that was an embarrassment to him. Like, it was not the movie that he made. And I think
still on it. That's what
right.
It's insult.
And what's interesting about the situation is I think David Ayer also deserves the same treatment here, because I know that David Ayer made a different movie than the movie I saw. I know he did, because those trailers, and I'm not saying trailers are always indicate a great movie, but knowing David Ayer's style and his direction and all the posts that were coming out of that set and then the trailers for it, there's a movie there that he made that I want to see. Now, I think David Ayer's story is a little different, but there was studio interference. Snyder's is on such a different level that I don't think it will create a precedent that people can change things. And I do feel like Sonic changed for the better. And I think we could take it case by case and look at certain things and go, yeah, maybe Sonic does look terrible. We should probably fix this. Yeah. Or Snyder does deserve to release his cut. We really, messed up. We brought in Whedon. It screwed up the whole Justice League, this trilogy that he'd been creating since Man of Steel. And those make sense. So I do think that people aren't going to look at this and think it's a gateway for other things to happen for every movie. I just think that this situation, in my opinion, the message that today sent was, stay away from my movie. Let me make the movie I'm making. You hired me to make this movie. You hired Chris Miller and Phil Lord to make Solo. Let them make the movie that they wanted to make. Stop interfering. Solo failed because of the studio interference, in my personal opinion. It also wasn't a great movie. But had Solo been released the way it was intended and shot, I guarantee you it would have been a hit. Now, I don't know that for sure.
So you think people online are going to use rationality and logic when making decisions about, like, because Kevin, I think all of your points are 100% right. I think I agree with you 100%. My going back to my initial fear was that it set off this trigger of like, wait a second, I didn't like that movie, and I heard that the studio got involved and changed this and that. So give me the director's cut. Like, that's my fear, is that like that instantly people's knee-jerk reaction is going to go, well, you gave him the Snyder cut, so I want this director's cut of this movie because I heard that they made him change the ending. Like, that's the only dangerous part. I agree with both of your points 110%. I think Snyder's circumstances are beyond comparable. I just worry about people not thinking about that and not thinking about it rationally or logically and just knee-jerking and going, well, he got what he wanted, so I want what I want.
Ironically, what you just said is weird, because the reason the Snyder Cut is being released is because of people online doing that in a strange way.
No, but people online use rationality and logic. I'm arguing that a lot of people right now are going to start using or not use rationality and logic.
I see what you're saying.
And in time, the media legitimized it. But there have been a bunch of other little flare-ups of release this, release that, and you can almost step back and look at them and be like, that's not going to go anywhere. And it fizzles. It fizzles out.
Yeah.
If there's any precedent, then we'll move on after this because again, we've exhausted this topic.
No, it's a great topic. This is about
I
artistic
don't mean
integrity.
to be like the Debbie Downer of this. I'm just talking about like what the potential ripple effects of this monumental moment in movie history is going to be.
It's the same exact argument that Jake and I have about our logic of Tenet being released or not. It's the exact same thing. Jake's just coming at it from a logical standpoint. I'm coming at it from more of an emotional standpoint. But I think there's somewhere in the middle you can find.
Sean, one quick question. I have one quick question, and just about a small detail of this story that astounds me. When Zack Snyder walked away from Justice League to go deal with family issues, in the Hollywood Reporter article, he said that like he walked away with all of his footage. Like how, like, is that fairly common? Like, can you just straight up like walk away with the footage that you shot like on a hard drive and keep that? Because he had all of that stuff. Like, how do you walk away with that? How did the studio not stop him?
That's a great question, and one that I honestly don't have the answer to.
I'll tell you why. I think I know why. When you're someone like, I think when you're at that point in your career and you're Zack Snyder, I bet you Nolan can take his footage home. I bet you Tarantino takes his footage home. I bet you.
Yeah, but they're still their movies. It wasn't Snyder's movie anymore.
No, I agree, but I do think that there are certain filmmakers that are at a certain level that can probably bring stuff home. I bet you JJ brings Star Wars stuff home with him. I guarantee it. I mean, in the sense of, I think that Snyder is not like a young director. He's not like a first-time director walking into a studio making a Justice League movie. They've been working with him since 300 and all these big movies on Warner Brothers. So they kind of just trust Snyder. Now, I don't know for sure what they gave him or what he went home with, but I feel like Snyder was at a level at that point where he could just bring anything home with him. In
the run-up to when he knew he was probably going to have to leave, I wonder if he just made copies.
That's true. For people who didn't watch the live stream today, there was a really funny bit that occurred before the announcement about a thumb drive where Snyder was joking about, like, if I really wanted to release this, I would have just put it on a thumb drive and left it in a bathroom for someone to find. And then he went into this whole rant about, like, I'm kidding, please don't pick up things in the bathroom. And Henry Cavill was, like, really worried about people getting germs or picking up something from a thumb drive. But it was a really cool event. I do recommend people seeing it. I believe it's on Vero. At the end of the day, please check it out. I mean, if you're a Man of Steel fan, it's really fun to sit there, prop your iPad up, have Snyder sit right in front of you. It's almost like you're watching it with him in his theater. It's a really cool thing.
Really hard at a comment from one of his diehard fans that said, "I've never wanted Man of Steel to be over this quickly."
Dude, honestly, I will tell you right now, Jake, we woke up this morning and Jake sends a text and says it's Christmas, and I was like, you know what? It kind of is. So as I'm sitting there watching Man of Steel today with Sean, and we're like messaging each other over Hangout, I felt like a kid on Christmas morning who was waiting for my parents to wake up so I could go downstairs and open up my presents. And you knew you had this 2-hour window where your parents were still sleeping, right? And you get up at 6 and they're not up until 8, and you can't go downstairs because your dad told you won't get your gifts if you don't go downstairs. So I'm sitting there watching Man of Steel. I'm the same way, Sean. I love that movie, but I'm like, please just get to the Zod death.
And so that's not a short movie.
No, but I loved watching it with Debbie and Zach. I thought it was really cool how they explained the character, and there's so many great details in there about great moments. Watch it, please.
All right, let's get to the next bit of news, which is the fact that the 2021 Oscars are planning to potentially be delayed. And I want to get your guys' opinion on that. What is the reason behind this? That they're not going to have enough movies to choose from? That they don't think that the industry is going to be able to gather in a group for a show? Like, I don't understand the reasoning behind this. Does anybody have any...
I feel like it's the former in that, I mean, there is sort of this ongoing joke of like, oh, Bad Boys is going to win Best Picture, or like Sonic's going to win Best Picture. But at the end of the day, like, really, when you think about the number of movies that are like, I mean, think about last year, just the movies that came out in the last 3 months of last year that were fighting for Best Picture. Like, and yes, they have opened it up to streaming movies that can prove that they were going to go to theaters. But even then, it's fairly shallow lake. Like, it's still not going to be. And I think, is it going to be sort of, a situation where whatever wins Best Picture next year sort of has that asterisk next to it? Like, yeah, you won, but like, your competition was Sonic. You know, I think their argument is like, well, maybe. But then again, it's still December 31st, right? Like, even if the ceremony gets pushed back, the eligibility date is not changed.
I mean, unless they change that also.
What's interesting?
What's going to come out in January?
I don't know. It's interesting. It's actually an interesting question. You know, what's going to come out? But like, I think the answer to your question, Sean, comes down to this idea that if it's going to be postponed, I think it has to do with productions, movies that were supposed to come out in like October, November, December that aren't finished, that would have been potential Oscar pieces. You know, it's funny, you're talking about taking footage home. Jake and I interviewed Andy Serkis last week, and he was in the middle of literally editing Venom 2 in the room that I was interviewing him from, which was crazy. And so there's a lot of these productions that were able to finish production and they can edit now, like Tenet and things like that, and hopefully still get those to release. But there are probably, I don't even know, I'm just guessing, a bunch of films that were supposed to come out in October, November, December that were Oscar-worthy films that either, one, need to do reshoots, need to do some pickup shots, some ADR stuff they can't pull off right now. I don't know what the social distancing thing is. Other side of the coin is this. If you're the Academy, now I guess technically speaking, Variety announced this, so the Academy has not publicly made a statement about this yet.
Yeah, that's true. Variety does say that it's unclear if postponing the Oscars will also mean that the Academy will allow films released after the year-end deadline to qualify for the 2021 Oscars.
But it's interesting that this story came out because the Oscars changed their eligibility in April. So, for example, the movie Greyhound, which we're going to get to in the show later on, is moving to Apple Plus and Apple TV Plus. And what's interesting about that move is it's a gigantic Tom Hanks, special effects driven World War II naval film, which looks awesome, by the way. I think the trailer is great for it. They're moving that to Apple TV Plus. That movie can still win an Oscar for Best Picture or anything, because any movie that had a theatrical window, we've said this in the show, that had a 7-day theatrical window in LA County for 7 days straight, 3 times a day, that's your automatic approval to be eligible for an Oscar. But any movie that had a theatrical release date that has now been forced to move to VOD can still get that eligibility.
Of Staten Island.
Right. So I guess my
can we just give it to Fincher for Mank? Can we finally can we just give Fincher an Oscar?
It'd be West Side Story.
How about Nolan?
Or Nolan.
Give it to Nolan. So yeah. So
okay, here's the question: Nolan's nominated for Best Director. Fincher's nominated for Best Director.
Spielberg's nominated for Best Director.
Spielberg's won it. Okay, let's I'm talking about like
who do you want to get their first one?
Yes,
Fincher.
I think I'm going Fincher too, just because I feel like Fincher's been in the game longer. Like Nolan will get it, but like Fincher,
sure, the game. I get it.
In a weird way, that's actually really funny. That wasn't intentional, was it? Was that intentional?
No, it wasn't.
Yeah,
because I can't.
No, that was great.
You guys know my behind the scenes stories. I can't even watch that movie anymore.
Oh, yeah. Well, what's interesting about, I know, but could you imagine a Best Picture race? Spielberg, Nolan, Fincher.
Oh.
And here's the thing. I think I said this before. Denis Villeneuve. If Dune comes out, there's 4. What's interesting about the Best Director Oscar is I feel like Nolan and Tarantino and Fincher are all in the best company ever. They're in a company with Orson Welles, Kubrick, Hitchcock, who never won Best Director at the Oscars. That being said, I would love to see Nolan take.
I mean, that's home like, look, like I get your justification, and I'm sure if you told them that, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, sure." But at the end of the day, I'm sure they'd rather be in the other company, because that means they're also in our company, in which because we've never won Best Director Oscars either, so they're also in our company.
But we also live in a world where our guest this week, Damien Chazelle, has a Best Director Oscar. Nolan, Tarantino, Fincher do not. But it's interesting because I still feel I feel so awful that happened to him. Anyways, but that movie is so incredible. But regardless, that is really interesting to think about. That Damien Chazelle has a Best Director Oscar, but Tarantino, Nolan, Fincher don't. Now,
at 36, isn't he 36?
But he's a phenomenal filmmaker, and I have no problem with him winning. But it is crazy to think about that perspective. Like, Hitchcock never won a Best Director Oscar. That's weird.
Thank God the director of Cats has one, though.
Let me get to Spike Lee, who just recently won his first Oscar. That was his first
Oscar. He was given an honorary Oscar before. This is for screenplay, for Black K Klansman.
Black Klansman. He drops the trailer for, yet again, a movie that's now going to streaming, Da 5 Bloods.
Well, that movie was always Netflix, wasn't it?
Was it always?
I thought it was.
I believe so. Yeah.
So he dropped the trailer for that. It's not the movie that I was expecting it to be at all. And it's funny because even in the beginning, it almost set up like it was going to be a little bit like Inside Man, which Inside Man is a bit of a bank robbery heist.
I like Inside Man.
Oh, it's great. It's tremendous. And so then they talk about this movie and they say it's these Vietnam veterans who are much older now, but they are going to go back to Vietnam because they have hidden gold from back in the day. And it makes me think like, oh, this is a bit of a treasure hunt, right? Like a little bit of a heist element, which Spike has told before. But then when the trailer plays out, it's very politically charged, which again shouldn't surprise me because Spike Lee doesn't mind getting politically charged. But it's almost like him exercising the demons of the Vietnam era because there's some Nixon footage in there, and there's the way that black soldiers were treated during the time in Vietnam, and Spike has very strong opinions about that come through even in the trailer. So I'm excited to see how much of that he's going to bite off, like how much of his commentary. He mixes history in all the time in his storytelling, even in his most contemporary films. So I'm really intrigued to see what Spike Lee does with a Vietnam era film, especially because what was the one that he did for the World War I?
Red Tails.
Oh no, Miracle at Saint Anna.
Miracle at Saint Anna, yes, as well too. He did because I got to interview him for that in Toronto.
Dude,
and,
you did that junket?
Yeah, were you there?
I did that junket.
Oh, that's really funny. Yeah, he was great. I sat down across from him and they were like, he's from Charlotte. This is Sean O'Connell. He's from Charlotte. And Spike said, what is Michael Jordan doing with the Bobcats? Why can't he get that team off the ground? And it was like right when the Bobcats were really struggling. They were a new franchise. We had just gotten a basketball team back. And it was just fun to talk NBA with Spike for 5 minutes. And we literally talked NBA for 5 minutes. And then Spike turned around to the people in the room and he was like, give this man more time. I'm chewing up his time talking about the Bobcats. And
so you did getting like a double slot with him?
Yeah. I got more time with him because he just wanted to talk about Jordan. Because then he's like, what do the people in Charlotte think about Michael Jordan for real? Like, tell me what they think about him as an owner. And so then we started talking about that for a while. And then that's when
they didn't put this in The Last Dance for some reason.
No, I didn't get I was waiting the whole time, waiting for my Spike Lee conversation about the Bobcats.
I always find it to be very nice, and I think he's a very giving interview, but I find him to be an intimidating person to sit across. Maybe just because he's so smart and he's such like a no BS. I also know that he'll call me out if I say something that not necessarily challenges him, but if I say something he doesn't understand, he's gonna. I feel like he's gonna say, "What do you mean by that?" And you better be able to back up what you're saying. And he also seems like he doesn't suffer fools. Like he's not gonna suffer stupid questions. He is the kind of person that I put in the category of like, I got to be on my game when I walk in the room to talk to him.
You better got game.
I better got game.
Well, it's interesting because the 5 Bloods trailer, I agree with you, Sean. It was much different than I expected it to be based on the plot. But it's interesting because Black Klansman was my favorite Spike Lee film since Do the Right Thing, and I think that that was it re-sparked. I guess it re-sparked that whole interest in his filmmaking for me, and I think that he's made great films in between Do the Right Thing, obviously, and this. I mean, with Malcolm X, and he got Game, as you mentioned, Inside Man, Clockers was his as well, right, with Harvey Keitel. I think that was his. And so I've always been interested in his style of filmmaking, but after Black Klansman, I'm all in. I mean, I just feel like he's telling stories that are so important and so interesting and so unique to his voice. And, he's made some very bad movies. I mean, there have been some bad ones. Like Chirac I didn't particularly like.
Chirac was so bad.
It was terrible. But at the end of the day, every filmmaker, most filmmakers don't have every movie is perfect in their book unless you're a Fincher or a Villeneuve or Tarantino or Chazelle. Yeah. But there are a lot of filmmakers who do have misses. And I think Black Klansman really kind of put him back into that boat for me where I'm like, I want to watch another Spike Lee movie. I cannot wait to see what he does with the Vietnam era. What was the movie about Vietnam? It came out in the 90s. It's actually a great film. Was it called Dead Presidents? That was a Vietnam film, right? It was. I remember I know
what Dead Presidents because I can see the poster.
There were like masks. It was like a robbery. I thought it was a
Vietnam movie.
I thought it was like a bank robbery movie.
I thought Dead Presidents had a Vietnam element to it, but I could be wrong. I was trying to think of like Vietnam films.
Have we done favorite?
Yeah, Vietnam.
Spike Lee?
No, I don't think we have.
We should do that sometime.
Dead Presidents, by the way, is really good. It's by the Hughes brothers. Came out in the 90s. It dealt with the Vietnam War in certain aspects, but it was really good. I don't know why I thought about that film, but I was just thinking about Vietnam era films, and that was one that kind of came to mind. But some of the best Vietnam movies ever. I mean, everybody knows, Apocalypse Now and Full Metal Jacket. I always found the Vietnam era to be an interesting filmmaking aspect, right? It's always very fascinating what they can play around with. And like, what do you guys think is the best Vietnam era film? I'd probably say like Full Metal Jacket, maybe.
I think I had. It's got to be. I was gonna say Platoon. I would automatically. So I almost attribute the Vietnam War with Oliver Stone. Like I think the Vietnam War colors so much of his storytelling, and Platoon would be his sort of, epic tome about the Vietnam War. But yeah, Apocalypse Now. I mean, how do you not choose Apocalypse Now? That feels like it's the definitive one.
I always found like war films to be super interesting, especially what aspects are focused on. Like you go, oh, we're seeing another World War II film. Like, Greyhound's a World War II film. That's a World War II naval film. There's been so many movies made about World War II. I think I mentioned Red Tails earlier. That was a World War II film. And so, there's just so many different aspects you can touch on, and there's stories that I don't know about. I didn't know this particular story. I don't think Da 5 Bloods is a true story, by the way. I mean, it's not the actual story itself's not true. It's based in a reality of Vietnam, but it's an interesting story. I think Chadwick looks really great in it. I think he looks super skinny. Did you see how skinny he looked?
I'm assuming he dies, right? Like he's the group member that's not there. Yeah.
Well, they go back to find his remains. I mean, we don't. And that's where because apparently they hid this gold treasure that Sean referred to, and they're going back to actually to get the remains of their squad leader, which is Chadwick Boseman, and then we'll also find the gold.
All right, let's shift to Greyhound, because Jake, I specifically want to ask you this. It feels like Greyhound. This is Tom Hanks's movie, his World War II naval film. It's going to Apple TV Plus now. It had a year-end theatrical.
This summer. It was going to be a summer.
This summer it was. Yeah. Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Father's Day weekend was the release.
Becomes another one of those films that surveys the landscape, realizes how crowded theatrical is going to be if and when everything opens up again, chooses to go streaming. Are you disappointed? Because this feels like a film that would benefit from a big screen.
Yeah, I mean, one, I want to see, obviously, every Tom Hanks movie on as big of a screen as possible, but like a Tom Hanks war film featuring submarines. I mean, and also, we've talked about this before. If a submarine movie plays it right, like you should feel claustrophobic in that movie theater. That's going to be harder to do in your living room. There are certain things that I wanted to experience out of that movie. I just know aren't going to be possible. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'll be the first person to press play whenever it shows up on Apple TV, but maybe, I guess Hamilton I'd put in this category too, but this is the first big, maybe just because I've seen Hamilton in person, so it doesn't feel as much of a miss. This is the first big movie that's going straight to streaming where I thought like, damn, like I was looking forward to seeing that in theaters.
All right, but let me ask you this then.
Yeah.
You get the option to get it on Apple TV Plus a little bit later this year, or you have to wait till the end of next year?
Yeah, I'm gonna press play. You're saying I have to wait to the end of 2021?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I'm pressing play.
Because I mean, like I'm saying, it's just waiting for the right theatrical window to open. Might not be till the end of next year, theoretically.
Yeah.
I weirdly think that Greyhound falls into the same category as Trolls and Scoob. And I'll tell you why. I think it was. I think that Greyhound was a big epic. I don't know that it would have done well. I don't think Tom Hanks. I think a lot of box office driven material these days is based on prequels, sequels, franchise stuff. I think Greyhound would have had a hard time doing well. I think Sully did well because it's a story that everyone knows. Greyhound is a story that we don't know much about. It's also, a very CGI heavy action film from the trailer. But nothing in that trailer spoke to me in the sense of like, oh, I cannot wait to see that. It looked cool.
But it feels like such a dad movie. Like it feels like the kind of movie that like a lot of I could see as the kind of movie that like opened pretty decently, but like had great legs. I could see the kind of movie that like doesn't really drop weekend to weekend because the average person for whom that movie is maybe targeting, which is maybe a little bit older moviegoers, aren't the opening weekend kind of people. So maybe it opens at 25, but maybe weekend 2 it's 17, 18. and then from there it's 14. I could see it having maybe not had an explosive opening, but I think it would have done well over the summer because I think it targeted a type of audience that normally doesn't get targeted during the summer.
I just feel like that kind of movie, to me, like it would be more dramatic if Warner Brothers sent Wonder Woman to VOD versus Sony sending Greyhound to VOD. And I know those are two extremes, but the point I'm making is I don't think Greyhound was going to be, again, and this is just speculation, I don't think it was going to be this gigantic box office hit.
I think it was
a movie that, yeah. You thought it was unusual?
At the end of the trailer, when Tom Hanks turned to the camera and said, "I'm the captain now."
That was weird, but it actually made sense and made me laugh. But you're right.
Sometimes I hate this show. Sometimes I really, really hate this show.
But you know how Gabe feels.
Truly, the point I'm making is I don't think Greyhound was really a movie that was going to do extremely well at the box office. I think.
Why do you hate Tom Hanks?
I don't, but I think the move to Apple TV Plus didn't surprise me at all. It wasn't a film that was big enough on my radar. And again, you're talking to somebody who wants to see everything theatrically. But if we're going off the themes we've been discussing on this show for the past couple of months, which are look at the films they're moving, look at the films they're not moving. They're not moving Wonder Woman, they're not moving Tenet, they're not moving all those movies to VOD. They're moving films that would probably have had maybe more of a softer opening. Yeah, I mean, I think Trolls would have done fine, but it probably was more successful on VOD.
I wonder how Scoob did. Does anybody know how Scoob?
We haven't heard anything, which is...
I saw it was the number one. They announced that it was like the number one VOD movie. So Capone was number one for a few days, and then Scoob came out and knocked Capone down to number two. I'm just glad that I'm saying Capone and not Capote anymore, because I was saying Capote a lot when Capone was coming out.
It'll always be Fonzo to me. All right. This week in movies that are actually coming. Did either of you guys get a chance to see The Lovebirds? Kumail Nanjiani and Issa Rae. Is it funny?
When is this being posted? Tomorrow or Friday? I gotta find out the embargo. I'll just say what I'm gonna say and then we'll figure it out. The movie's fine. It feels very heavily edited. Say what?
I hear they're really good together.
They're great, and that's the only thing that makes the movie work is their chemistry. The problem is the filmmaking isn't great. It feels like it's like almost pieced together by somebody who didn't really know how to edit a film properly. There were scenes that just didn't feel like that meshed well together. It felt rushed. There was extremities in tone. I thought jokes were made that didn't... You know when you watch a movie and a joke can be offensive in the middle of a film, but it'll work within the world of the tone of the movie, or not offensive, but more of like a joke that might only work in a certain tone. Like there's like certain humor, like Fargo. When you watch Fargo, you're laughing at some violent aspects that happen in that movie. Or Pulp Fiction, you laugh when Marvin gets his head blown off. Like that's not really a funny moment, but with the tone of the environment the director created, that scene becomes funny. This movie, okay, actually the Marvin example is a great example. So Marvin getting shot in the face in Pulp Fiction. That's a perfect example that I want to lead into the Lovebirds aspect of it. Lovebirds has scenes that work on that level, but the tone isn't set properly by the filmmakers in the story to allow that moment to come across as funny versus just weird. You know what I mean? So like there's tonal balances, I think, in this movie that just don't work to fit the comedy they're going for. I think it goes back and forth between serious and funny, but doesn't find that blended element where you can enjoy them in a specific way where everything makes sense. That was my problem with Lovebirds. I think they were great together, but I think the edit of the film, in my opinion, or the tone that was created hurt the overall story.
Gotcha. Also coming to VOD, Rocketman, the great Elton John biopic. Yes, we all saw that movie. We got to see it in London together.
Okay. A year ago, right today.
Remember how many flights Kevin had to get on to get to that junket? You went to Germany, didn't you? Germany.
Did I go to Germany?
Yeah, you went to like 3 different places.
Munich.
In order to get to Munich, right? Yeah. Kevin showed up like 10 minutes before the screening started.
And I started my day in Los Angeles.
Oh.
And then flew to London and I still to this day need to find out who the guy was that drove me to the hotel from the airport. I got into a car with a complete stranger, which I thought was just insane. But the story they're referring to is we were all in London watching Rocketman, and I was delayed, or my flight, I actually missed my first flight because of the traffic jam in LA. And I was like, literally, I left for the airport 2.5 hours prior to my flight. But it was a Friday and it was stupid. So I missed that flight, and thankfully I had enough miles in my account to be able to shift it without causing any extra costs. And then I ended up flying through Munich and then through to London from LA and walked into the screening 5 minutes before it happened.
These are the stories that we don't miss anymore. I do miss travel, and I absolutely miss hanging out with you guys in cool places. But the stress of air travel and bouncing around, I don't miss that even a little bit. And I'm not quite sure how easily I'm going to be able to get back into that.
I mean, look how much younger Kevin looks now that he's not traveling anymore.
I've actually been sleeping for the first time in my life.
Yeah.
Oh, I
in a fetal position in an airplane seat.
He's Benjamin Buttoning.
I hate this, by the way. I can't wait till my beard grows back.
Why'd you do it?
It was an accident. I was trying. I mean, I felt like my head weighed more.
For people at home, we're addressing the fact that Kevin is clean shaven.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm clean shaven.
Feed this week to see Kevin's clean shaven face.
It's the equivalent. It's equivalent of the Metallica T-shirt this week.
Right. No, Jake, my stubble says Metallica. It says Metallica right here.
The last one is Ready or Not. Ready or Not, the horror film, is coming to HBO platforms on Saturday, May 23rd. I didn't care for that movie as much as everybody else.
I show that movie to a lot of like that. I feel like it's a very fun movie to be like, hey, you ever watch it? Like I showed it to my folks. I think over Christmas because I feel like it's a super pitchable premise. It's got a great elevator pitch. It's a very easy to explain, and then usually like triggers people to be like, oh yeah, I gotta watch that. My folks loved it. It's a super easy watch. I liked it a lot. It excited me a lot about those directors taking on Scream 5.
Oh, they're the ones doing Scream 5. That's interesting. Yeah. All right, so anyway, that comes to HBO on May 23rd. The Blend Game this week. God damn. People, how much more do you want out of this show? Damien Chazelle interviews, Snyder Cut talk. You want
next week is gonna suck.
Yes, we're mailing it in for the next few weeks. We're going to sleep. Steve Carell Blend. Hashtag Steve Carell Blend. Our favorite Steve Carell films. This is based loosely on the fact that he's in Space Force. I think we all acknowledge. Do we all kind of agree that Michael Scott is his greatest?
Yes, without question. The fact that he never won an Emmy for that is an actual travesty.
Did he get nominated?
Every year.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, and he always lost to Alec Baldwin for 30 Rock.
My 12-year-old son, Brendan, ran through The Office, and he said, what other shows can I watch that are like The Office? And I said, none, really. Like, it's kind of a standalone thing. And he goes...
The British Office?
So now he's watching it again. He's literally...
I kid you not, I've watched it start to finish. I not an exaggeration, probably 12 times, maybe 13 times.
Yeah, I know. You said when we had our John Krasinski interview,
which we still haven't aired.
Never see the light of day.
Release the Krasinski cut.
You told him this. Well, that's still a September release, though, isn't it? That movie's coming.
Yeah.
Quiet Place 2. Yeah. Anyway, Steve Carell. As much as we love him as Michael Scott in The Office, I'll go first and say that my all-time favorite movie that he is part of. Oh God, I just want to change it. I'm torn between two. I'm going to go with Anchorman. I'll go with Anchorman as just being flat out one of the funniest movies ever. And it's one of those movies that was it was funny from the minute you saw it. Like the jokes landed, the characters were hysterical. It's so easy to just spoof that era of news reporting, but it says so much still about like news stations to this day. And maybe it's funnier to us because it's a little bit more, but I mean, it's universally funny. But there's,
I don't know. I saw it. I don't say when I was a kid, but like I was before I was in news, and thought it was funny. I mean, I think I was a freshman in high school. So I wasn't working at a TV station. It's funnier now that I work at a TV station, but it was funny then too.
It's also one of those performances. Like Brick should be a really annoying character, right? Like I don't like when characters are that dumb. But Steve Carell makes it so funny. Yeah. Like he comes over to Christina Applegate, Christina Applegate does not get the credit that she deserves for being the straight man in all of that comedy. Like having to play off of all those people, but she sets them up repeatedly for so many killer jokes, and then gets really great jokes of her own. But when Brick comes over to tell her about the party in his pants. And she's invited, and he just completely botches it, and she has to sort of help him through it. Like it's just hysterical. It's so funny, and I love Anchorman 2 also. That's one of the sequels that does hold up for me. Oh yeah, no, don't make that face. It's funny. I think Anchorman 2 is also really, really funny. But if I'm going to pick a Steve Carell film, so the other one I was sort of debating with was, well, I won't say it. Maybe it's one of your guys. I'll say it at the very end if neither of you guys mention it. But
I interviewed Carell for seeking a friend for the end of the world, or so. I forget the movie they did. Yeah, and so one of my questions was, you can tell a lot about someone by like how they spend their final moments on this earth. So I went through all of his characters and said, if it's the end of the world, what is this character going to be doing? And when I got to Brick, he just said, eating a candle. And just that image of like an asteroid coming in and Brick is just eating a candle. Just that image, it made me laugh out loud whenever he said that. Anyway, so it's a great choice.
Rick, are you just naming things that you see, or do you really love Lamp?
I love that he doubles down. Like, no, like I love Lamp. I love Lamp.
All right, Jake, you're up.
I'm going with a movie that I think he actually should have gotten an Oscar nomination for, which is 40-Year-Old Virgin. I think it's such an incredibly sweet movie. That is, and it's got an amazing supporting cast and supporting characters. All the secondary characters are really well written, whether it's Paul Rudd or Seth Rogen or whatever the case may be. But that movie rests on his shoulders. Like, you have to care about Andy. You have to care about that guy. You have to see something of yourself in him. You have to cheer for him. You have to take this very sex-oriented plot, and it can still be salacious and lots of sex jokes and stuff. But for it to be both so sex-oriented, but just so genuinely sweet, and it's because it's so grounded in his performance, I love it so much. Like all of Apatow's movies, I think it's 20 minutes too long. But I just think that movie is a perfect example of what he's capable of. Where you really, that was always one of the things that I loved about him playing Michael Scott, which was, as stupid as the character was, he had moments where he made you realize how good of a salesman he was. It really kind of humanized, and he had great human capabilities. This is what I love about 40-Year-Old Virgin, is as salacious and sex-oriented as the plot is, he's there to remind you of how sweet and genuine it is. And I don't think it would have worked as well with anyone else in that role.
Yep, yeah. I 100% agree. Kev?
Yeah, I think 40-Year-Old Virgin is a great choice because at the end of the day, with comedy like that's that raunchy or action. When a character is grounded like that, whether they're in whatever genre they're in, horror, whatever, it makes the comedy, the horror, or the action better. It makes it more realistic. So when you care about a character like Steve Carell's in 40-Year-Old Virgin, that grounded nature makes the humor funny. I also went with Anchorman because I think Brick is arguably one of the greatest characters ever put to screen. I would do anything to watch a Brick movie. Just in general, just call it Brick. I know there's a movie. You know what I mean? I feel like there's like so many.
But have it be the exact same plot as Brick, but
right.
Just in Brick.
Right. And like Ryan Johnson.
Ryan Johnson would probably approve that.
That'd be amazing.
We should tweet him from the Real Blend account that we have this idea.
That's kind of fun.
Honestly, I think what makes that character so great is his innocence. He has no concept of bad. You know what I mean? Like, and I feel like when you watch Brick in that movie, there's a level of like, you're almost like, I kind of want to be like that. Where like not
where he kills a guy and everyone's like, hey, he killed a guy.
No, I mean, but I think, obviously that's very heightened. But my point is, and you can't go through life like Brick. I mean, in the sense of like, in the sense of his character. Actually, yeah, he was successful. He was a successful guy on that.
Yeah, what did it say at the end? Did he end up becoming like Secretary of State or something? Yeah. Like he ended up like getting like a very like high profile position.
That's the point I wanted to make. I think Brick is actually secretly probably one of the smartest people on the planet. I just think that he just goes through life with a very positive outlook and just doesn't have a filter and just says things. And I think that's what makes Brick so interesting is he's just always looking at the positive side of things. And like whether or not they're in a fight, I mean, Jake makes the joke about him killing somebody and then not knowing it. I mean, just that nonchalant attitude about life is just so fascinating to watch. And every time Brick would enter the screen, the movie would just be amplified for me. I think he stole every moment from everybody in that cast, and that cast is incredible. I love Applegate, and I love Will Ferrell, and there's so many, and Paul Rudd. There's so many great moments in that film. But at the end of the day, Brick is the person I see when I think of Anchorman, and that character, a supporting character, to really just take away scenes from their leading characters in regards to comedy is not an easy thing to do. And obviously Carell wasn't intending to do that, but that character became legendary. And the I Love Lamp line is just one of the most iconic lines ever. I love Brick, and I think that character, it's funny, I've actually had the chance, and Jake has as well, we've interviewed Carell over the years, and he speaks very eloquently about Brick. Like, he actually has very detailed, like, thoughts about who Brick is and, like, what kind of person Brick is. And, like, I find that interesting because that could just be, like, a stupid comedy. But to him and to a lot of actors, they take that stuff seriously. Like, remember, Brick doesn't know he's being funny. You know what? Brick doesn't know he's in a movie. Yeah. And this is what Carell was saying. Is like, Brick is just being Brick. And, like, he's not going for laughs. He's just being him in this world. And Brick doesn't know there's an audience watching him. And I think it's that separation, that element is what makes him so special, is because he is a character, but Steve Carell becomes him completely. There's no Carell on screen. It's all Brick. And I think that this is all
his range. Like, his range as an actor.
I mean, right. Don't forget how good he was in Foxcatcher. Like, I wouldn't, yeah.
We all picked comedies. All three of us picked comedies, but you could go with something like Foxcatcher. I almost went with Dan in Real Life, or Little Miss Sunshine, where he played a suicidal guy. Like,
I almost went with Crazy Stupid Love.
Yeah, another one.
That's a great movie too, but in a weird way, the reason I'm happy that Brick is being discussed in the show right now is that in a 40-Year-Old Virgin, Jake makes a great point. He should have won an Oscar for that, or been nominated for an Oscar for that. And this goes back to that ever long, comments I have all the time about comedy not being taken seriously. I think Steve Carell is one of the greatest actors working today. That guy has insane amount of range. Brick, I do think, is the best performance of his career. And I think that will be probably not taken lightly, because people will say, oh, the dramatic roles or the Foxcatchers or Dan in Real Life, which I do love those performances. But I would argue that what he does with Brick is the hardest thing that he's done as an actor, in my opinion. Because I don't feel like, I think transforming, like for Foxcatcher and things like that, I think those are tough performances. But to get comedy right, I think is harder than to get drama right. And I'm not an actor.
It's Rumsfeld?
Yeah, he was great. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rumsfeld, yeah. But he is a great actor, and I think that Brick is my favorite character he's ever played, which defaulted to my favorite Steve Carell performance.
All right, next week. Well, before we get to next week, audience picks. Arthur Mingo said Crazy Stupid Love. Michelle Garrist and several others went with Jake and the 40-Year-Old Virgin. Kimberly Sue said Dan in Real Life. It's tough, man. His range is terrific, and you can go with comedy. And it just for Kevin's saying, because he invests so heavily in his characters.
Right, he cares. Like, he actually character studies Brick. Like, it's not just him going to a set and just playing a comedic character. He buys into who Brick is. And, like, because we're watching a comedy, we don't give him credit for that, right? Because it's a stupid comedy.
Scott. He bought into Michael Scott, and that's what made that character so special.
And Space Force, you mentioned. The only reason I want to mention that, and I think Jake would agree because we've watched the first couple episodes, I think there is an embargo on reviews and things, so I'll just keep this vague. But same thing with The Office, where it's this heightened state of craziness, but Carell finds a grounded nature with him. And I think that is so hard to do with comedy, to ground him in a world where we can relate to him, but we're dealing with things that we will never experience in our own lives. But if you put a grounded person in that scenario, you can laugh at it because you can relate to a person being put in that scenario that you've never been in. And I think that's the beauty of acting. Sorry to go long-winded, but... Yeah.
Next week might be a little bit tough. We're going to play hashtag Natalie Portman Blend. Hashtag Natalie Portman Blend, your favorite Natalie Portman film. She's been producing a number of films for a long period of time. And the one I thought of right off the bat is pretty early in her career. And, do you want to recognize something when she was younger? Do you want to go with something a mid-tier, something she did recently? So have a lot of fun playing hashtag Natalie Portman Blend on social media. We'll plug it a little bit closer to the show. Of course, you can email us your pick at realblend@cinemablend.com. That brings us to our review for this week. This one comes from, yes, Kevin.
Have we not ever done Gary Oldman blend?
I don't think we have.
We have to do that one eventually. I'm sorry.
We should save that for Mank, for when Mank comes out.
Oh, I'm sorry. I only thought about that because of Natalie Portman in The Professional, which is just one of them.
What if we got Fincher on this show?
We're getting Fincher on the show.
Just stop. Please stop it.
All right. This is from Max Missouri, who said, "This is the greatest show, man." And they said, Max says, this podcast is special. I enjoyed movies from time to time until I saw Sicario. And I actually forgot that I was sitting in a crowded theater during the border scene until someone said, wow. And that's when I went head first into movies, even attempting to write a screenplay myself before failing and putting the dream away. December of 2019, after finishing a 3-day Tarantino marathon, quote, Kill Bill is his greatest achievement in character, don't argue. I wanted more. I, like many others, found your interviews and found the chemistry between you all to be incredible. I did what I do with all podcasts, and I started at the beginning. Your enthusiasm pushed me to write again, and I finished a 105-page screenplay a few weeks ago and have already made strides to start a third draft. At the state it's at now, it would get a classic Jake Hamilton quote on the poster. But it's because of this show that I can annoy my friends by talking about useless movie trivia, quotes, and film stock. Thank you, Sean, Kevin, Jake, and Gabe for keeping this plucky Aussie kid's dream alive. Cheers, lads. Great review. Excellent.
Cool.
Thank you very much for submitting that.
Thank you for watching.
If we can inspire anybody to get back into any form of creativity, whether it be short filmmaking, screenwriting, music composition, anything. Oh, wait, he has a PS. Of course, he adds Dunkirk in all exclamation points. And then he said, Kevin is right on 1917. I swear, this is a legitimate ad. Kevin is right on 1917. The movie would not be as good if it was shot like a normal film.
And did you notice, Sean, that he added that as an unbroken element to his letter? So he did put an edit, thanks, and put his name, and then had the 1917 thing. So he stitched it all together.
Yes. How dare you? Sam Mendes was a tremendous guest on this show, and he will not return if you keep crapping
I
on
love
his
Sam Mendes.
I believe it's pronounced Mendes.
Mendes. To everyone take a drink in the Real Blend drinking
By
game.
the way, one thing I will say about our show, and like we get a letter like that, I tell Sean this and Jake and Gabe this sometimes. Like, at the end of the day, we do this show because we want to talk about movies together. That's really what the show is. And then when we have filmmakers on, we want to geek out with them about the filmmakers. If one person listened to our show in the 2 years and went out and watched a movie because of our show, I consider that to be a win. And the fact that, like, multiple people are doing that people are finding genres that they may have never watched before, learning about different film gauges and stocks and, things like that, or talking about the characteristics of a performance that Jake will dive into with the actor. I mean, there's so many different elements that I just find so... It's just a beautiful thing when someone tells you that they went out and watched a movie or watched a film differently because of the way you talked about it. And like with Social Network, with our commentary, which I'll plug if anybody hasn't heard it, we did a Social Network commentary where we watched the film all together and commented on it. People have been watching that and then like learning things about the film they might not have known before. And we're not even involved in the production of that film. So I just think the beauty of what we're doing here, and this is not like a tap on the back thing, it's more of just like, I just love our community of people, and I love that we can all live in this positive bubble of film when there is so much negativity out there. So it's just cool to hear people are legitimately listening to what we're saying and acting on it, which is just cool. I mean, someone in another country is listening to our show and going, I should watch Sicario, or I should watch, that's pretty amazing. So I've had people that have done that for me in my life, whether it be like certain radio broadcasters or interviews that I've watched, or James Lipton, when I watched his stuff and learned about a certain acting method that De Niro used in a movie. And then I would go watch that movie and go, oh my God, thank you to James Lipton for saying that, because it changed the perspective of my perspective on an audience. And today, Sean, you and I were watching the Man of Steel stream, and Snyder says something so simple. There's a moment in Man of Steel where Cavill gets I think, hit really hard and spits out that blood in that moment. And, it's a moment that's interesting, but hearing Snyder's topic around it, the idea that, oh, this is supposed to show you that this force is so large that even Superman's bleeding. And like, I had never really thought about that concept. Like Sean just said about the opening of a movie with Damien Chazelle. I never thought about that. So now every time I watch La La Land, because of Chazelle's answer, it's going to change my entire perspective of how that opening works. And so just, I'm also a fan of the show. Like, I'm learning things from the show that I then take into my life, and I watch movies differently because of our guests, or the way that Sean describes a personal outing that he had that meant something to him in his life, or Jake had something that, I'll never watch The Lost World again without thinking about Jake's story, or I'll never watch, Oh Brother Where Art Thou without thinking of, like, when I think of Oh Brother Where Art Thou, I think of Sean's story. I think of you and Michelle. And so like, that's, the show changes perspectives, and it's just interesting. I just want to say that.
Thank you very much. I love it. So listen, follow along with us week after week. Send us reviews also that tell us that you've been moved by the show or what you're getting out of the show. And follow us on social media at Jake's Takes, at Kevin McCarthy TV, at Sean_O'Connell, or of course the Real Blend podcast page itself at Real Blend. Again, the community page over at Facebook. Give that a follow. Chime in. Start discussing some things over there. And I don't know. What else do we have to talk about? We'll have a show next week with a guest, probably. I'm not quite sure who we have. I'm losing track of the days and what movies are coming. But I know we'll have something really cool to do here on the podcast, so tune back in. And until we are back together here as a Real Blend family, I leave you with
Dunkirk and Tenet.